Welcome to another edition of the J Report. On today's episode, we speak with Rabbi Tal Sessler. Now, he may descend from Ashkenazi Jews, but he officiates at a Sephardic temple. Not sure exactly what Ashkenazi means. Not clear how broad the term Sephardic is. Well, have no fear, that's the focus of our conversation today. Get ready for Ashkenazi and Sephardic Jewry 101. Then, our correspondent Marc Ranucci joins us for the first installment of Goy Meets World. Yep, we have brought on a non-Jew to smoke out some Jewish rituals at High Havdallah. You don't want to miss out on Marc's Mishigas. Okay, here we go. This is the J Report. My name is Brad Pomerance, joined today by Rabbi Tal Sessler. He is a rabbi at the Sephardic Temple Tifereth, Israel. He happens to be of Ashkenazi descent, but he officiates at a Sephardic temple. So today we're going to talk about the Ashkenazi and the Sephardic. You may have heard those terms before, but we really want to dig deep so we can understand the differences and distinctions. So let's start, Rabbi, with the most basic. From where do the Ashkenazi descend? From where do the Sephardic descend?
Great. Well, thank you, first of all, for inviting me, Brad.
Of course.
It's a pleasure to be here. Ashkenazi really, historically, is an umbrella term for Germany.
Right, literally.
Jews who come from Germany. Later on, rather, it became an umbrella term for Jews of Eastern European and Central European descent. Today, we see a Russian Jew, we say, oh, he's Ashkenazi.
Right.
Russia is a little bit further to the east than Germany. But historically, it meant German Jews. And similarly, Sephardic Jews used to mean exclusively, strictly from Spain.
And Portugal?
And Portugal, right, the Iberian Peninsula, right. Correct. And then the Jews who left that area of Spain and Portugal moved to North Africa, some moved to Turkey, Italy, Greece.
Even Holland.
And Holland as well, right? So originally Germany and Spain, but then later on it really became, today, when we say Ashkenazi Jews, people mean European Jews, save the Mediterranean, except Mediterranean Europe. And when people say Sephardic Jews, they actually, most people today, mean not only people who came from Spain or whose families originate from Spain and then moved to the Mediterranean, North Africa, or have you, but actually it became an umbrella term for Middle Eastern Jews, Mizrahi Jews.
Or non-Ashkenazi.
Exactly.
But for our purposes, right. I do want to focus on the true term Ashkenazi, kind of Germany, Eastern Europe, Sephardic, Iberian Peninsula, because the Mizrahi are a separate group.
Correct.
More of a geographic group, whereas Ashkenazi and Sephardic do have certain traditions and mores that are distinct.
Correct.
Now, when we think about the United States, today, I'm sure well over 90% of American Jews descend from the Ashkenazi, a much smaller percentage from the Sephardic. But the reality is, when Jews first started to come to America, it was not as I just described. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. What can you tell us about that?
Sure. I think, there's something very historically symbolic and poignant from a Jewish perspective about the fact that in the very same year in which the Jewish people lost its greatest center outside Israel, 1492, we lost Spain. That was a big catastrophe in Jewish history.
And I would remind our viewers, the Iberian Peninsula in the 13th, 14th, 15th century, some would say could be as much as 20% Jewish.
Correct.
10 to 15 probably is the more accurate number, but hundreds of thousands. And these Jews, we'll talk about it momentarily, but were really ingrained in that society.
Mm-hmm. Right. There are those who claim that to this day, some 20% of Portuguese citizens have some Jewish lineage, DNA, both, all of the above. So going back 1492, the Jewish people loses Spain. That would be equivalent to, God forbid, Jews being told you can no longer reside in North America today. That was the center. But that very same year, as we know, is also a tumultuous year in world history because Christopher Columbus is the first European that, quote unquote, discovers the American continent. And that's the outlet, that's the future outlet for the Jewish people, will be the United States.
Now, what we know about that voyage is there were definitely Jews and or conversos. Many were forced to convert as they walked onto the boat
Right.
In 1492. Some believe Christopher Columbus may have been Jewish or had Jewish roots. What do you think?
Well, I think there's a historical anecdote that circulates that the initial voyage in 1492, heading supposedly to India, but which brought us to these promised shores, was supposed to depart on Tisha B'Av, which is the Jewish day in which we commemorate calamities, and it was postponed. And the reason it was postponed from that day is probably because there was a significant number of Jewish people on board. So
what's interesting about what you just described is when the Spanish Inquisition in 1492 began, Jews started to disperse. And what we know is that a group of Jews went to Holland in the 1500s. Holland then had some success in South America, in Brazil. For a time, some of these Spanish-Dutch Jews moved to the east coast of Brazil. Then the Spanish took over, and the Jews were looking for somewhere to go. They wound up on Caribbean islands that were not controlled by Spain. And then when the American Revolution hit, what happens to these Spanish, Dutch, Brazilian, we'll call them Jamaican, we'll call them Barbadian Jews?
Well, one, I think, interesting note about Sephardic Jewry, Sephardic American Jews or Jewish Americans, is that they are, in a sense, the Mayflower of Jewish Americans. They came centuries before Ashkenazi/European, predominantly Eastern European Jews came to this country.
The first Jews in America were Sephardic.
Correct.
Undeniable.
Right.
Without question, no historical doubt.
And when did what was the main wave of European Jewish Ashkenazi immigration? 1880 to 1923.
Over 100 years after the Sephardic arrived.
And the people who came, the Sephardic Jews who came first, they came in the several thousand in batches, if you like, but some of them played an invaluable role in the fashioning of the United States.
Well, we know someone named Chaim Solomon was one of the main financiers of the American Revolution.
Right.
We can't deny that. What I'd like to do when we come back, sir, is talk more about the Ashkenazi Sephardic movements, like groupings, we can call them, talk more about distinctions, and let's continue our conversation. We are speaking with Rabbi Tal Sessler. My name is Brad Pomerance. We'll be right back on the J Report. When we come back, the Ashkenazi arrive in the United States. That on the other side. Welcome back. So Sephardic Jews arrived in the United States in the 18th century. What happened when the Ashkenazi landed on America's shores in the 19th century? Watch. Welcome back. It's the J Report. Brad Pomerance here with Rabbi Tal Sessler. He is a rabbi at a Sephardic synagogue, and I want to speak more about the American experience. What we know is the first Jews in America were of Sephardic descent from the Caribbean, essentially. And when we think about when the Ashkenazi started to arrive in the 19th century, the Sephardic at that point were already kind of well-ingrained nobility, high society. The dregs of Ashkenazi came in. Talk to us about that tension when that occurred.
I think we had these two communities that developed over time different languages.
And we'll talk about that. We're going to go there.
The Sephardic Jews have their own language, the Ladino, which is really a mix of Hebrew and Spanish.
It's a beautiful language. It's really genuinely beautiful.
Right. And of course, the analogous Ashkenazi language is Yiddish, which is a mixture of Hebrew and German. So over time, over the centuries, different communities developed different prayer texts, different liturgies. They developed different melodies, that the musical melodies of the prayers were influenced by where they lived. You know, if you walk today into a Middle Eastern synagogue, you would hear the kind of chantings that come from sometimes Arab music.
Right.
And if you walk into an Ashkenazi synagogue, let's say a Hasidic synagogue, you'd hear some tunes that were picked up around Russia somewhere. So there were these differences in terms of practical Jewish practice, differences in terms of language, differences in terms of prayers, differences in terms of...
And I want to dig into the reasons for that. Because what we know is today, when we're speaking Hebrew, we're actually speaking a Sephardic dialect as opposed to an Ashkenazi dialect. I remember, I'm of Ashkenazi descent. My father, my grandparents would say Shabbos. That's an Ashkenazi sound. Shabbat is the Sephardic sound. It's kind of ironic in that Sephardic Jewish numbers are quite small vis-a-vis the Ashkenazi, but the Sephardic pronunciation is what's prominent. What do you make of that?
Well, in the Ashkenazi Orthodox world, especially, needless to say, the ultra-Orthodox world, they still maintain the Ashkenazi pronunciation of the Hebrew, the Yiddishisms, right?
Of course.
If you walk in Brooklyn today, even, for example, or different parts in the United States and Israel, elsewhere, you will still hear Good Shabbos rather than Shabbat Shalom. It depends on where you go. In Israel, the situation is different. In Israel, Ashkenazi Jews and Sephardic and Mizrahi Jews are basically roughly 50-50. The demographics are fairly balanced. Most secular and modern Orthodox Israelis are already, quote-unquote, ethnically mixed families of Ashkenazim and Sephardim. And I think that the decision to opt for Sephardic Hebrew in Israel is because Israel is in the Middle East.
Right. You talk about ethnically mixed. I have a friend who's of Sephardic descent. When his parents got married, his father was Sephardic, his mother was Ashkenazi. That caused a problem. I mean, not so long ago, even in America, you know, some Sephardic families saw themselves as kind of royal nobility and they wouldn't even consider marrying the Ashkenazi. Others, by the 20th century, saw it as the reverse. The Sephardic were now the lowlifes and the Ashkenazi were the elite, the German Ashkenazi. Do you see that tension still existing today?
I think less and less in Israel, because both the demographics are fairly even in Israel between Ashkenazi and Sephardim. And the first generation of Israelis actually came from different countries, from different cultural languages. That tension was pronounced. Today you have fourth generation Israelis. When I think about my peers, having grown up in Tel Aviv, almost all my friends, including my own extended family, are families in which we have Ashkenazi and Sephardic.
Well, what about in America?
America is a little bit more insular, I think. The Ashkenazi demographic majority is still more solid. You have pockets of Sephardim, let's say, in all kinds of places. Seattle, New Jersey, Brooklyn, Los Angeles. But it's still predominantly, people think of American Jewry and Canadian Jewry, let's say, as predominantly Ashkenazi. In Israel, it's more integrated, I would say.
I want to dig deep into the kind of philosophical distinctions within Ashkenazi Jewry and Sephardic Judaism. I've heard this analogy that the Ashkenazi are very focused on the trees in the forest, the details, whereas the Sephardic look more at the broad picture. If you want to think about great Jewish thinkers, the Ashkenazi focus on Rashi, detail-oriented, whereas Sephardic focus on Rambam, big picture. Is that fair?
I think your choice of Rashi and Maimonides is a brilliant one, because Rashi lived in 11th and 12th century in France. He wrote a commentary on the entire Torah and the entire Talmud. Now that's super tedious and super detailed oriented. Now you take Maimonides. Maimonides comes in the 12th century after Rashi, And he decides...
So, from Spain, essentially.
Right, from Spain. And Rashi was from northern France. And he decides the Talmud is too detail-oriented, too many digressions. He creates his own book called the Mishnah Torah and says, I'm going to give you the bottom line of Jewish law in crystal clear Hebrew, with no footnotes, without endless digressions like in the Talmud. People were very upset. But people love to study Maimonides, Halachikot, the Mishnah Torah to this day, precisely because it is big picture, succinct, to the point, as opposed to this day. You see the Ashkenazi rabbis, they tend to delve into the legal minutiae, the halachic minutiae of Jewish law.
And there may be a reason for that, and that's what I want to get to when we come back, okay? We are speaking with Rabbi Tal Sessler. My name is Brad Pomerance. We'll be right back on the J Report. So why do the Ashkenazi look at Judaism through a micro lens, while the Sephardic take a macro approach? That when we come back. Welcome back to the J Report. Now, while the Sephardic faced the Spanish Inquisition, they did not suffer the centuries-long violence which befell the Ashkenazi. So how might these disparate experiences impact the Jewish practice of these two groups? Watch. Welcome back. I'm Brad Pomerance on the J Report, speaking with Rabbi Tal Sessler about Ashkenazi Judaism, Sephardic Judaism, and the distinctions between the two. So we talked about how the Sephardic may look at bigger picture, the Ashkenazi more detail-oriented. I want to ask about maybe the potential reasons for that. If you look at where the Ashkenazi were living and where the Sephardic were living during these eras, the Ashkenazi were in the German Rhineland, which was a place where there was a lot of proselytizing. The Christian fervor was heated. The Crusades were going on. The pogroms were going on. Whereas with the Sephardic, they at that point were in North Africa, in Spain. They weren't subjected to the same level of persecution. Do you think that could be the reason, part of the reason behind these distinctions? The Sephardic were able to kind of consider the best of their homeland, the outside culture, whereas the Ashkenazi would never even consider the best of the local culture.
I think that there's certainly an element of it that's historically valid. If you look at the history of Jews in Europe, in Western Europe, Eastern Europe, Central Europe, it's a much more traumatic and violent history. Like you said, the pogroms, the Crusades, culminating in the Holocaust, only some 8 decades ago. This, however, doesn't mean that the picture was completely rosy for Jews in Spain and other places. There was the famous Golden Age. But as the two of us discussed before, Maimonides himself, the pinnacle Sephardic rabbi, had to leave Spain because of what we call today Islamic fundamentalism, because he knew that if he would stay, he would have to choose between a forced conversion to Islam or losing his life. And then he moved to Morocco.
Right.
And then the same thing happened in Morocco, and then he moved to Israel, and finally he settled in Egypt. And so there is certainly this tension that you see even in the melodies, the lamentations.
But
there's a much more focus on suffering, and persecution and discrimination
with the Ashkenazi.
In the Ashkenazi mind, in the Ashkenazi heart, and the Ashkenazi liturgy. And the Sephardim, I think, have more of a joie de vivre. If you go, being a rabbi serving a Sephardic community, I can tell you that the whole ambience, the whole atmosphere in the high holidays is very different in a Sephardic synagogue than an Ashkenazi synagogue. An Ashkenazi synagogue, you walk in on Yom Kippur and it's fear and trembling. It's like this solemnity, you feel the gravitas. And in the Sephardic synagogue, there is a sense of intensity, but it's much more joyous.
That is fascinating.
And much more relaxed, in a sense.
And do you believe that literally is because of the different experiences over the last millennium? I mean, in that there was so much trauma and tragedy for the Ashkenazi, and I don't want to discount the Spanish Inquisition, that was traumatic, but just a different beast.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's a different beast. It's incomparable. Sometimes contemporary scholars, for political reasons, they want to paint an all too rosy picture. It's important to say that Jews in Islamic lands were, like other non-Muslims, considered dhimmis, which was the Islamic term for essentially second-class citizens. There was discriminatory taxation. There were sporadic outbursts of violence, but in no way were they as systematic and as vicious and genocidal as they were in Europe.
I want to ask you about the Kabbalah. I don't think people know whether the Kabbalah descends from Sephardic Jews or Ashkenazi Jews. What I do know is they impacted both groups differently. Tell us about the Kabbalah.
So the Kabbalah itself develops, as opposed to ancient Jewish mysticism, what we call the Kabbalah starts, if you like, in 12th, 13th century France and Girona, Spain.
These are Sephardic territories.
Right. And then it really kind of reaches its zenith, its culmination in the 1500s with the predominantly Sephardic Kabbalistic circle in Tzfat. You have Rabbi Isaac Luria, you have Rabbi Moses Cordovero, you have Rabbi Shlomo Halevi Alkabetz, who composed Lecha Dodi, which is the greatest hits of Kabbalat Shabbat. These guys gave us the Kabbalah, which is the heart of hearts of the Jewish mystical tradition that's super popular today in the Jewish world and beyond the Jewish world. So this Sephardic Judaism is deeply mystical.
But what happens with Ashkenazi adoption of the Kabbalah, if at all?
So what happens is fascinating. What happens is that Hasidism, the Hasidic groups like Chabad and many other Hasidic groups, they take the Sephardic Kabbalah, in a sense, if you like, that was innovated by Sephardic Kabbalists, and they turn it into they use it in order to create the Hasidic prayer book, the Hasidic Jewish worldview.
It's fascinating to think that a Sephardic invention, let's say, has so dramatically influenced a very popular and growing movement in Ashkenazi Judaism.
And to add to that point, if you go to Chabad today or any other Hasidic group, these groups, including Chabad, as I mentioned, are really a hybrid of Ashkenazi and Sephardic, because they were developed, those Hasidic groups, by Ashkenazis in Europe, and they pray in the Ashkenazi Hebrew, but their actual prayer text, their liturgy, is based on the prayers that the premier Sephardic Kabbalist, Rabbi Isaac Luria, used to pray with.
When we come back, I want to speak more about the synagogue and the movements within modern Judaism. We think about Reform, Reconstructionist, Conservative, Orthodox. Do we see both of those, or all of those movements, both in Ashkenazi and Sephardic Judaism? That's what we'll talk about when we come back. I'm Brad Pomerance. We'll be right back on the J Report. On the other side, how did the spread of democratic reforms impact the practice of Judaism among Ashkenazi and Sephardic Jews? That when we come back. Welcome back. Now you know the cliche, 2 Jews, 3 opinions. Arguably, we see that phrase play out with the creation of different movements within Judaism. But did the movement towards movement touch Sephardic Jews? Let's find out. This is the J Report. I'm Brad Pomerance. We're speaking with Rabbi Tal Sessler. He is at Sephardic Temple Tifereth, Israel. And I want to speak about the movements, the modern movements in Judaism. In America, we think about Reconstructionism, we think about Reform, Conservative, Orthodox. Do we have that in Sephardic Judaism or just Ashkenazi?
No, completely an Ashkenazi thing.
Wow.
What happened is the French Revolution. What happened is Jews in Europe are being told towards the end of the 18th century They're being told, you guys can be equal citizens. You can be equal secular citizens.
Right.
The Ashkenazi Jews of Europe have options. They can remain Jews, or they cannot remain Jews and marry other citizens who are not Jewish. And if they want to remain Jewish, what kind of Judaism do they want to practice?
Right.
So it's really in the mid-19th century in Germany that Reform Judaism is quote-unquote invented by a rabbi called Abram Geiger, that conservative Judaism is developed by a rabbi called Zechariah Frankel, modern Orthodox Judaism by a rabbi called Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch, and ultra-Orthodoxy in Hungary by an ultra-Orthodox rabbi known as the Khatam Sofer. But the Sephardic world never had this conundrum, because in the Sephardic world, the societies in which the Jews lived remained traditional societies. They never became full-fledged democracies. So people remained practicing Jews to varying degrees. They didn't have to redefine themselves in light of the modern experience the way Ashkenazi Jews did. So there is no such species, if you like, as a Reform or conservative Sephardic synagogue. You either have Sephardic synagogues that are Orthodox with a divider and mechitza, right, or you have Sephardic synagogues that are traditional but allow for a microphone and family seating. But there was no change to the prayer texts. And that is, for me, I think, because the Sephardic encounter with modernity was not as intense, dramatic, earth-shattering, pushing the Jewish people to redefine their identity as much as it was in Europe. I find that the Sephardic Jewish experience and practice to this day is much more even-keeled, relaxed, grounded, and less torn between worldliness and tradition, between modernity and change.
It's really a fascinating distinction. In our final moments, let's talk about food. My favorite topic. When I go to a Hanukkah celebration, I'm eating latkes, the kind of fried potatoes. In the Sephardic tradition, they may be eating something else. We're all eating it now, but what was developed in the Sephardic tradition around Hanukkah?
Well, around Hanukkah specifically, you have you mentioned the sufganiyot, the
right,
donuts, and you know, nowadays everybody's eating everything.
But that grew right out of Sephardic tradition,
right,
which I think is a key point. And then even in Passover, you know, we'll be eating the Ashkenazi. You know, we have the haroset and the egg and the salt water, whereas I think the Sephardic, they have peanuts and rice and corn. It's just a little different. I mean,
well,
is that fair?
Sephardim have way more options in terms of what to eat on Passover. And by the way, not all of them. Moroccans and Turkish communities do not partake of rice, for example.
Okay.
But most Sephardic communities do. So much so that there's a famous story that once a rabbi got up to give a sermon
right
on Passover, and it was a Shabbat right before the Seder night, and he told his congregation, I want you to think on the Seder night as you surround yourself with all these magnificent gastronomic delicacies about people who will have very little to eat that night. They're called the Ashkenazim. Okay?
That is actually very funny. I want to tell you, Rabbi, I have been so lucky to have had the chance to travel to the Iberian Peninsula and visit the sites of Sephardic Spain, and they are majestic and beautiful. I am Ashkenazi. I have been to Poland and Germany and Czech, and I love those stories, the roots there. But I hope that our viewers will take a moment to consider the history of Sephardic Jewry, because it is a beautiful one, and one that has impacted all Jews around the world, from secular to ultra-Orthodox. It's part of our experience. How is it for you, sir, to be an Ashkenazi Jew officiating at a Sephardic temple?
In some ways, it's a non-issue for me personally, and I'll tell you why. Because I grew up in Israel.
Right. And
in Israel, you know, if I think about my own family, I have Ashkenazi cousins, Moroccan cousins, Yemenite cousins. Being Israeli, my Hebrew is Sephardic Hebrew.
Right.
Being Israeli, I grew up in the Middle Eastern kind of mentality and culture. I'm a very touchy-feely, hug, kiss, great to see you, informal kind of person. So I fit that culture,
sure,
in a sense, like a glove. So personally, for me, it was kind of like a homecoming in America, serving a Sephardic synagogue.
Yeah, if you've never been to a Sephardic synagogue, I hope you have a chance to attend a service like you said, because it's a different experience. It's not a radically different experience, but you'll feel it. I mean, you could feel it. You can sense it. There's just, like you said, a lightness. I love when every so often we hear some Ladino kind of infused into that service, because it was and is such a big part of that experience. So I want to thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Again, I urge you to consider learning more about the Sephardic tradition, whether you're Ashkenazi, Sephardic, Mizrahi, Romaniot. There are so many different types of Jews throughout the world today, Ethiopian. My name is Brad Pomerance. You're joining us on the J Report. So did you enjoy Ashkenazi and Sephardic Jewry 101? I sure did. Okay, when we come back, a little more education with Marc Ranucci on our first installment of Goy Meets World. Get ready. It's the J Report. Now, while North Americans of all stripes may have a general sense of Jewish life and culture, there are plenty of non-Jewish North Americans that would love to learn more. So we decided to send out Marc Ranucci for a segment we are calling, yes, Goy Meets World. Watch as Marc smokes out some Jewish rituals at High Havdallah. Take a look.
Hi everybody, welcome to Goy Meets World. I'm Marc Ranucci. If you don't know what Goy Meets World is, it's probably because this is the very first one. Let me explain it to you. I'm a Goy and I don't really know anything about Jewish culture. So what I'm gonna do is go to a bunch of different places and find out about Jewish culture. Today, we're at High Havdallah, which I know what you're thinking, yeah, Havdallah is a high holy day, but we're going to it like a High Havdallah, like it's a high. I'm gonna learn a lot about Judaism and then probably immediately forget it because of the week. I'm gonna find out today what Havdallah is. I'm gonna find out what the food we're doing is, and I think it's kosher, but I don't really know what kosher means. And then we're gonna be smoking weed, and I don't know if weed is kosher, so I'm just gonna find out a bunch of stuff. And that's what we're gonna do here on Goy Meets World today. I need to grab Catherine from Mosin because I have one question. Catherine, I need you, okay? Come on, come over here. Yeah, you're allowed to be on camera.
How are you?
Blow smoke in my
Sir,
face.
thanks for
That's
coming.
fun.
Can you
Yeah,
get this?
I do have one question, Catherine. What's going on here? What's up?
Well, thanks for joining us. So we are ending Shabbat. Shabbat is something that Jews celebrate once a week. It's a time of rest.
Oh, so we could do this once a week.
We could do this once. We could actually do it twice a week because we do Pot Shabbat to welcome in the Shabbat, and then we do High Havdallah to end it.
Okay, so it does have to have a catchy name, though, right? Pot Shabbat, High Havdallah.
It really does. It does.
So what all are we gonna do tonight? Because I don't know really what does Shabbat mean.
Shabbat is on Friday night and Saturday, and it's just a day to rest. You don't have to hang out with people you don't want to hang out with. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do.
Okay, so am I like invalidating this? Because this is work for me. I'm at work. So is this invalidating the whole thing?
No, not at all. Because you're learning and you're absorbing. As long as you like leave with a feeling of being like rested and excited for the week,
I think I'm already gonna have that because of this. So I mean, you're doing a really good job.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. So we're gonna do a little short prayer service with some prayers in Hebrew.
Cool, love it.
Yeah, and the Havdalah service is a little different than Shabbat, so that might be a little bit fun. And we have lots of food and donuts.
I'm excited about that.
Jews love donuts, and
They do? That's a thing?
That's a thing.
I don't.
I love donuts.
Everyone around me just laughed. Like that is the most common knowledge thing. Well, I think here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna go eat some donuts because yeah. She knows what she's talking about. All right, we'll see you there. You're a rabbinical school student, right?
I've dropped out. I'm no longer.
All right, cool. So, but you were.
Yeah, but most of what I know about Judaism is from like the internet.
Okay, so we could probably trust this guy, right? What is being kosher?
What is being kosher?
Yeah, tell me. I don't know anything.
Keeping kosher.
Keeping kosher. Good. That's good to know.
Like a person who observes kashrut, the Jewish dietary traditions,
Uh-huh.
the halachot, the laws, as we say, of Jewish dietary rules.
You're recording this, right? So I can watch it back so I
There
can
will
learn
be a
all these
test.
words. Oh,
okay,
there's
right?
Gonna be a test?
That's called keeping kosher.
Okay.
And so people who keep kosher observe these rules.
What's the number one rule?
The number one basic things that people kosher,
We gotta get it. What is
pig.
it? Pig?
Is
No
not
pig.
kosher.
And why?
It's treif. You know what treif means?
No,
It
like
means
trifling?
Yeah, not kosher.
Like gross? Like, ooh, that's trifling. Like that?
Yeah.
What's rule number 2 of keeping kosher?
no shellfish.
No shellfish. And
Right.
why is that?
People will often say because they're bottom feeders, but really it's just because that's what it says.
That's
in
just
the,
what
in,
it
in
says?
The Torah, yeah.
What's your favorite kosher food?
Well, a lot of foods are kosher. You just don't realize that they're kosher.
Okay. All right. So what's
Are
your
you kind of
favorite?
asking me what's my favorite food?
Well, I mean, as long as it's, I guess,
Oh,
since.
I see what you're saying.
But
Like,
you've
some things
been.
can't be kosher, right? Like it couldn't be like bacon. That can't be it.
Well, yeah, because that's
Right.
not kosher. So
Right.
what's your favorite kosher food?
I mean, I do love pizza.
Pizza's kosher. That's tight. Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do a rapid fire. I'm gonna yell out foods, and you're gonna tell me if they're kosher or not. Okay?
That's a great way to do it.
Apples.
Yes.
Pork.
Never.
Crab.
Never.
What about a dolphin?
No.
Why not?
Only fish that have fins and scales and keep them for their whole lives are considered kosher.
Dolphin isn't a fish, though.
Right. It does not have fins and scales, right?
Yeah, but it's a mammal.
Yep. Not kosher.
We're here at High Havdallah, and the high is half of it. So we're just going to ask you, what weed do we have here?
So first of all, a mosin means balance in Hebrew, and I think
That is cool. I didn't.
Right,
I
right.
knew about Mosin before. I thought it was like Zen, like chilling
Zen,
out.
yeah.
But Mosin is a
balance.
Hebrew word.
It's a Hebrew word. It's found in the Torah.
Guys, that's so cool. That blew my mind right there. So where'd you find it? The Torah?
In the Torah, yeah. And I think it just it really illustrates what we're about in terms of weed. It's not always about getting high and getting stoned. It's about finding balance in your life.
Yeah.
Tonight we're getting really high and really stoned.
What is this? How do we use it?
This is an all-in-one pen. It's fantastic. It's called Good Night, and basically it the cannabis oil you can actually see right in here.
Oh,
There's
so
a
it's-
little window, and that's where the oil is. So it's a special recipe that Mosin made that's
Oh,
formulated to help people
cool.
go to sleep. And we find people have stopped taking their Ambien because they're using this pen.
That's crazy.
It's-
So if we do that, well, I'll pass out.
Yeah, so like we should not be hitting these at the beginning of the night.
Okay,
Because
so
we get really sleepy.
I'm not going to
Okay,
then.
but do you want to try it because it actually pulls really nicely?
So you want me to fall
No.
asleep on?
No, just have a little.
She's trying to knock me out. I don't think she wants. I think she wants me to just pass out. I'll try it. It's nice. It's smooth. It's a little lemony. I like it. It's gonna make me fall asleep.
Yeah, don't have any more.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna take. I'm gonna go take a nap now. All right. We'll be back. I mean, I'll be back in Havdalah and whatever in like 45 minutes. Cool. Is warm milk kosher?
I don't know.
Probably. Anyway, I'm gonna go take a nap and I'll be back.
Okay, I sure hope Mark wakes up from his nap. Stick around to find out. Welcome back. Fortunately, Mark did wake up from his restful slumber. Let's watch more of Goy Meets World at High Havdallah.
We found some other non-Jews. You guys aren't Jewish, right?
Not Jewish.
Not Jewish.
Hey, you've got a yarmulke on, right?
Yeah, I do. I have a bald spot, so.
Oh, so that's just what that is. You just carry it just for the bald spot. Okay, I got one question because I think you might be on the same page as me. Do you know what's going on here?
Absolutely not, but I'm loving it.
It's been a wonderful Havdallah.
I've had a few experiences like this, but this is my first time with this particular ceremony.
So you didn't just like wander off the street and walk into this backyard party?
Well, sort of, yes, but
But like you were invited. We don't have to get security, do we?
No.
You're just a rogue stoner walking around
sort of, but
a little bit.
I think that anytime a tribe gets together, good times are to come.
I think you just have a good time wherever you go, right? You will look at his face. Look at his little face. Just give him a little squeeze. Give his pinch a Look at that. So something's definitely about to happen. I'm not sure what it is. I think the Havdallah, I'm not entirely positive. They gave me some wine.
I ate some weed chocolate, so I'm feeling more spiritual for sure. And I mean, people said this ceremony was going to start in 2 minutes.
But that just might be stoner time. I don't know. Are Jews on time? Is that a stereotype? I'm not sure. But I'm sure that something's about to happen at some point. But I'm not sure when, and I'm not sure what it's going to be or what it's called. But that's what's up next, is that thing that's going to happen. So we'll figure that out. All right.
Did everyone get like a little bit of wine? Okay, great. Okay, so we're gonna all do Havdalah together.
Cannabis and Jewish rituals just are like meant to go together. I don't know. They're just like delis and other Jewish things, the Torah. Okay, Havdalah, what we're about to do, right? We're about to separate from Shabbat, this 25-hour fantasy oasis holiday every single week. Every single week.
That sounds tight. That sounds cool.
Imagining what the world could be like if we just like chilled and ate and drank and smoked cannabis and sang and met new people and hang out with old people. Like, wow.
It's called unemployment.
Goy Meets World already knows it. For the Besamim, so now we just made the blessing over wine. So we'll drink that at the end, so that'll be taste. And then for smell, it's traditional to, we're still swaying. Isn't that sweet?
I like the sway. I kept it going.
You might be Jewish, dude.
I mean, this is my discovery process. I'm really fitting in, guys.
Yeah.
Learning songs, swaying. It's
Oh
fun.
my God, we're gonna have like a bris and bar mitzvah for you by the end of the night.
Oh, yeah. Hey.
You're into that? You're saying,
Yeah.
yes, sign me up.
I mean, I'm not
Wait,
sure
is
what
that?
a bris is, but it sounds like fun. If it's
See-
anything like brisket, I mean, I like that.
Yeah. So for our Besamim, the next thing that we do is we use our sense of smell, and people use oranges with cloves and things like that. Oh, that was.
I'll take that the weed you took. Thank you.
Yeah. But we're gonna use
Got that.
our preferred herb spice, which is cannabis.
Heck yeah.
Marijuana.
Hell yeah.
Okay, yeah, hell yeah. Isn't being Jewish fun?
It is fun. So it reminds me of camp.
You went to camp?
I went to summer camp, yeah.
Oh yeah, that's very Jewish. You
Oh,
are
it is? Am I Jewish?
You went to summer camp and you're not Jewish? That's
I
bizarre.
did go to summer camp. Oh, watch out for her.
If we're all
Don't drip
super
wax on
quiet-
her.
If we're really quiet, we can actually hear the candles extinguish in the wine. And
This is what closes out Shabbat. Is like this
sound.
this sound, yeah.
so now we use like smell, taste,
non-
sight, and now we use sound, so you can listen for the sizzle.
Shavua Tov?
Shavua Tov.
Shavua Tov, everybody.
You're crushing it.
Thank you.
And then there's the last thing that's traditional for Havdalah is to sing for Eliyahu, which just like it seems like there's some people who are unfamiliar entirely with things I'm saying, so that's why I'm like mentioning them.
It's me.
So right.
It's
Oh my
it's
gosh.
me. I'm the only person here that doesn't know anything about this.
So we sing this song Eliyahu, and it like sometimes it used to creep me out thinking about like messianic ideas. Like that's so weird. Like Jews, messianic. That's so weird. Like right? But singing about Eliyahu, it's just so beautiful. It's like singing for like what you hope to be this perfected world, which I think doing
Like
this kind of stuff.
Like a world with a bunch of free weed like tonight that's
Exactly.
that's like pretty perfect, right? Like just we go to a tight house and they just have free weed. That's as perfect as I need it to be.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Exactly.
All right.
So we'll sing for Eliyahu. We have a taste of.
We
have
sing
a
for
taste
free
of-
weed. I like.
Yeah, exactly. 'Cause
Cool.
Yavo Elenu.
Yavo Elenu.
Mashiach ben David.
Mashiach ben David. Mashiach ben David.
Look, then all these people are never gonna forget that song. It's gonna be like.
Yeah, I'll never forget those words either. I definitely
Yeah,
have
we'll
them
remember
committed
that.
to
Committed to
memory.
memory.
There we go. So that's Havdallah, basically. So what was that? What happened? I don't speak Hebrew.
I don't have to speak Hebrew to pick up on
It's
what's the value here.
It's a party.
It's a party, right? It's like, let's have a holiday every week.
Yeah.
What's the value in having a holiday every week? Well, people will get together, feel good, sing, eat, like be thankful, express gratitude.
Yeah, that's great. I like all of that.
Right? Aren't these like and for me, cannabis culture plays right into all these same values. Like
It really
all
does.
connects. I
It's
don't
all
think-
interconnectedness. It's about hanging out. It's about being fun and cool.
and open-minded and trying things and connecting. And
Exactly. That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
It's all about coming together. That's what my whole thing is about too, because I am coming into Jewish culture,
Yeah.
learning all about it. So I think this is a perfect place to start for me.
Totally.
Okay, that's all for this edition of the J Report. For the entire J Report team, I'm Brad Pomerance. Thanks for watching.